Hey Terrace CRC, it's the middle of May, the third week of May, and this is my video for this week. In these videos I just share more sociological stuff related to the church, and often these are just simplified versions of larger presentations that I will usually give when I'm doing a specialized transitional contract in a church. I often do those as like what I call town halls. So today's topic is the life cycle of a church. And people who study this have figured out that there is a standard life cycle that you can expect a church to have unless something on purpose diverts from that standard process. The standard time frame for the life of a church is understood to be around 60 years. There are a few things that can change that, but what that means is that at year zero, a group of people form the church, they plan it, they maybe build the building or buy the building, and they start the ministry, and the membership numbers of the church create a bell-shaped pattern of its life cycle. And so what is expected there, again, normally without things changing, is a 60-year life cycle. In other words, after about existing 30-ish years, it hits its peak in terms of involvement and membership and will begin to decline. This, in my experience, is especially true in churches where the founding group has pretty firm control over the shape it takes and holds on to that. The organ in the church is usually a good illustration of how that happens. At least the organ as played traditionally in a church. And so if that founding group was immigrants from Europe, the organ will be very important to them to maintain, to keep, because it brings echoes and memories of how church was in the old country. So here's what can divert from that. Well, let me go first to a second pattern, a way of explaining this. You can depict this as a journey of four friends. And just imagine, I'm just trying to make an example, four friends who are hanging out one day, and one of them says, you know, we should take a trip down to Vancouver and do a few of the things that can be done down there and enjoy that. That's the person who has cast the vision, suggested the dream, suggested the activity. So that person's nickname could be Vision. A second person will often then take over or lead the conversation and say, okay, so what's the plan? When are we going to do this? Whose car are we going to use? What are we going to do for food? How are we going to stay? Where are we going to stay when we get there? All those kinds of plan questions. So their nickname could be Plan. That's the second of the two people. The third person just likes hanging out with their friends, and so their nickname is Relationship, and that's what they're all about with it as the journey gets made, as the plan gets fulfilled. The fourth person, or stage actually, is all about making sure the plan unfolds as it was given. So they're the one that halfway might say, weren't we going to turn off and stop in Kamloops for half a day or something like that? Because that was what the plan originally was. And so their nickname would be Maintenance. And so a church, as it runs through its life cycle, runs through those four stages, really. And so it starts with the plan, the dream, the vision being prominent. Then the plan being prominent, how's it going to be implemented? And the relationships might be strong through all of that, and usually at the peak is when the relationships are strongest. But when the decline begins, what happens is that the church, on this journey that started out towards a particular vision, will become about maintaining what it has built, keeping going what it has. So I've served churches where they couldn't manage a youth group anymore or a Sunday school anymore, and the founding generation gets very upset because that was part of the plan, and why is it not happening anymore? So those 4 stages of vision, plan, relationship being strong, and then maintenance being everything are the 4 stages within that life cycle. What has been shown is that the life cycle, once it reaches the peak and starts its decline, that's its best opportunity for a positive disruption that might start it on a new vision and new plan and new journey, new purpose. And so that could be an event, that could be a speaker that comes to town and excites everybody about a particular thing. That could be a ministry that is started in the church that is very successful and brings in new believers, new people who create a fresh environment for something new to happen. Or simply a wise founding generation that realizes from the beginning that they've had to disciple the next generation, and then as soon as possible, hand over the visioning and the planning to that group so that it can stay current in the culture that is happening. So another way that plan to death, if nothing happens at that stage and you get about halfway down the backside of that graph, it is going to be very hard to prevent the church from dying out, because that's a life cycle, is start and finish. But if something new happens or something changes or something succeeds, then you can avoid that. I would say, from what I know, I don't know a whole lot about you as Terrace CRC, but for you a multi-generational thing has happened that doesn't always happen in a church, especially in a larger urban area where there are more options and people might get tired of mom and dad's way of doing church. They'll just start another one or join another one that already exists. But here in Terrace, you seem to have at least 3 in some. You have several clans, first of all, and the clans have remained part of the church by and large, and no one overpowering clan. The influence between the clans is pretty balanced, and so what you have is multiple generations participating in the church and being given leadership roles all the way through the generations, and that's one of the reasons you're still alive. There are, of course, spiritual reasons and theological reasons and others, but in these videos I talk mostly sociological factors. So that's some thoughts, some awareness. What I've had in 2 churches, I vividly remember teaching this. Now, I was there as a transitional minister and they knew they were in trouble, and when I gave this presentation in a fuller way, I remember one lady especially said, why is there nobody from the denomination going around teaching this so that we knew of the danger before we started on the decline? And so that's partly why I share it, is so that people can know and understand and recognize that there are things that can be done to start a new layer of visioning and planning. Now, another video I plan to do is on vision. A better way of saying it for me right now would be, a identifying of values that carries you forward, not vision. Because, as I'll say in that video when I get to it, is vision is a way that we lie to ourselves, and we actually can accelerate the death by lying to ourselves about vision. So identifying values and living out truly core values is more important than vision. But my purpose today is to simply give you that data, that information, so that you now also can't become a person who says, why did nobody ever tell me this was a thing? Enjoy the rest of your day today and the rest of your week. Thank you.